I was always, as many people are, really curious about the death of Marilyn Monroe.
One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36.
Marilyn actually died in 1992, JFK in 63, Dorothy 65, and Bobby Kennedy 68. But Kennedy decided that if JFK was run for president, then they couldn't have that on the front page with this new movie. Bobby Kennedy dumped her. And in the CIA documents, it talks about the fact that Marilyn was very upset with that and threatened to go to the media. And in that CIA document, it said that she was going to the media with all of the secrets, that the Kennedys had told her. I was always, as many people are, really curious about the death of Marilyn Monroe. Now, we're going to get these out of sync because Marilyn actually died in 1992, JFK in 63, Dorothy 65, and Bobby Kennedy 68. But I started looking into that. And what I found out was that, Marilyn Monroe had an affair. First of all, she had one with JFK. But Kennedy decided that if JFK was run for president, then they couldn't have that on the front page with this new movie star and all that. So he kiboshed that and then went ahead and she had a relationship with Bobby Kennedy. Make a long story short, what I was able to show is that Bobby Kennedy was responsible for Marilyn Monroe's death. There's a CIA document that I uncovered where readers will be able to look at in both Collateral Damage and the book since then, because the next book was called Collateral Damage, The Mysterious Death of Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy Kilgallen and the Ties That Bind Them to Robert Kennedy and the JFK Assassination. I was able to connect them all because the whole situation with Marilyn Monroe was she had this torrid love affair, as I proved through documentation and primary source witnesses, that relationship went great until Bobby Kennedy dumped her. And in the CIA documents, it talks about the fact that Marilyn was very upset with that and threatened to go to the media. And in that CIA document, it said that she was going to the media with all of the secrets, that the Kennedys had told her. And so right away, the alarm raises with Joe Kennedy, with Jack Kennedy, and with Bobby Kennedy. And what happens then, as I've been able to prove in that book, is that he was able to go ahead and orchestrate the death of Marilyn Monroe because they couldn't go ahead and let her expose all the things that went on with that relationship. So that was enough. And I was very pleased with where I was. But then this whole thing with the Warren Commission bugged me for a long time. And I will tell you, we're going to get to the point where I'm going to tell you that right now, we just repeated the Warren Commission with this task force on government secrets and this guy named Jefferson Morley and this Congressman Luna and all of that. Because what happened, if you think about it, with the history of Jack Kennedy's assassination, if you go back to 1963, basically there was the Warren Commission. Then it was, the next commission, I can't recall the name of it, they looked into the Warren Commission looked into the JFK assassination. Well, there was J. Edgar Hoover. He wasn't going to let them look at anything but Oswald alone. Then they had the next commission, and they looked into a little bit of the mafia involvement, and actually Marcello, but said they couldn't pinpoint it. There was another commission, and now we've gotten to this task force on government secrets that we'll talk about in a minute. But I found, again, this one guy calls me one day. My wife can tell you, after I got off the phone, I screamed because nobody had ever, Lyndon Johnson, in the new book, readers will read how he and J. Edgar Hoover picked the Warren Commission members. Picking them, you're shaking your head, you're right.
Yes, it was
picking
wild.
them by saying, wait a minute, we don't want this one because he might cause trouble, Oswald alone and everything. We don't want Jerry Ford, who became president, because, no, wait a minute, we do want him because he can't think and chew gum. I mean, it's just nasty in terms of how they just stack that deck at the Warren Commission. But anyway, this guy calls me Morris Wolf, and he said, Mr. Shaw, I was watching one of your presentations at the Allen Library near Dallas. And I said, is that right? And he said, I noticed that Dorothy Kilgallen was mentioned in there. I knew her. Well, that was just huge because there's not an awful lot of people that knew Dorothy. So he said, also, I can tell you that I was first of all, I worked for Bobby Kennedy in the Attorney General's office. And I was the go-between between JFK in the White House and Bobby Kennedy at the Justice Department. I rode my bicycle back and forth between the two men with secrets between them because they knew they couldn't use the telephone because
Hoover.
Edgar Hoover was tapping it. You're going to think about that. So I said, but Dorothy Kilgallen, you knew her? He said, yes. And he said, while I was then working, again, this was just huge, I was working with Senator
Senator Cooper?
Yeah, Senator John Sherman Cooper of Tennessee. I was his legislative assistant. And Mark, I used to ride with him to the Warren Commission hearings. I said, you did? I'm scribbling as fast as I can because I'm not able to record it. And he said, yeah, he's telling me all about the corruption at the Warren Commission. Earl Warren doesn't give a damn about anything but Oswald Along. Neither does any of the people on that commission and everything. He gave me all these secrets in terms of what happened. So that became the book, Fighting for Justice. And I was able to let the audience know that they could go into Fighting for Justice and realize that the Warren Commission had no intention whatsoever of doing anything but going ahead, and the Oswald Alone was going to be the final verdict. And one of the things I want to just mention quickly, because history can change so quickly, is that what I was able to find was that when the Warren Commission was finally deciding what the final report was, maybe you'll remember this in the book, what the final conclusion was going to be. Senator John Sherman Cooper and a senator from Georgia, they decided that they wanted a dissent in there.
Is this Russell?
Russell, exactly.
Russell, yeah.
Got a good memory. And Senator Richard Russell, they wanted a dissent in the final report because they did not believe the magic bullet theory. They didn't believe that it was Oswald Alone. They didn't believe all this. And so then J. Edgar Hoover and the other ones, the powerful people, abuse of power on the commission, said, you betcha. And I have words in the book about the final hearings and everything. Yeah, for sure. We'll put that in this dissent and go ahead and put it together with the final report. Of course, they never did. And you can imagine how history would have changed, because since 1963, I don't know, is that 63 years or no, more than that? I guess it's 63 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Just think what would have happened if there would have been that qualification to the Warren Commission report, but it wasn't. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, we're stuck with that Oswald Alone situation. So I was done, and we're almost done. Your audience is probably bored with this. Mark, get on with it. Okay, so how did you decide to write Abuse of Power? I had always been curious about the assassination of Robert Kennedy, 1968. Now remember, 62, 63, 65, 68. 4 icons of the 20th century, all, and including Kilgallen, as we'll talk about, was murdered. All right, so I thought to myself, how about the connection between those 4 deaths? And I got to thinking, wait a minute, look at the JFK assassination. No question, there was a patsy there used by Marcellus. Then you get to not so much Marilyn Monroe's. You get to Dorothy Kilgallen's death, and I was able to prove that this woman. I just want to backtrack just a minute so people know who she was a little bit more. When JFK died, and it was personal, she went to L.A. She interviewed Jack Ruby. She interviewed Jesse Curry. His book is right over here. He told her that the shots came from the overpass. So she didn't believe any of that junk about Oswald Alone or any of it. And then she decided, wait a minute, Ruby told her I think kind of confessed to her in terms of what happened. We will never know what he exactly told her, unfortunately, because when she died in 1965, her JFK assassination files and her the book manuscript that she was writing for Random House, a tell-all book, were both missing. And we'll get into her death in just a minute, or I guess we can. So Dorothy decided whatever Ruby told her to go to New Orleans, and that's where Carlos Marcello ruled, and that empire of his stretched on into Dallas, of course, and that's how he ended up using Ruby and using Oswald. So I got to thinking about that, and I went ahead and one day I thought, how about Dorothy Kilgallen's death? I have proved that this gentleman named Ron Pataki, who was a romantic interest of her later in her life, when her husband and she were estranged. He was an alcoholic. He was the only person that she shared her JFK assassination information with. She's the only one who was able to get Jack Ruby's testimony at the Warren Commission. She shared all that with him. And then I was able to prove that he had leaked it to the wrong people because he had gambling debts. That'll come into the Robert Kennedy assassination. And Marcello was able then to pressurize and compromise him into setting up Dorothy Kilgallen for the kill. And what happened with that was that when she was getting too close to the truth and she told her friends, if the wrong people knew what I know about the assassination, it would cost me my life. I bought a gun and all of that. About not too long later, she was found dead in her Manhattan townhouse in a bed she never slept in, wearing her hairpiece, her eye makeup and everything. Looked like she was going on a date. They found a bottle of Seconal next to her bed. They sent a junior detective there. He decided that she had died of an overdose. And what was leaked to the press was that she died of an overdose of drugs, overdose of barbiturates, circumstances undetermined. Now, unfortunately, that particular communique to the media made everyone believe she was a druggie who killed herself. And that ruined Dorothy's reputation. In fact, when I took up working on The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, I could find nothing about her since 1965 because it tainted her reputation, and I've been trying to restore that reputation ever since.